Now you could try to open up the seams here and slide this over top of this one. My weather comes this way, so it's overlapped this way. But these seams are so tight, I don't see a problem just by overlapping like that. Looks pretty good to me. Okay, this panel here is going to be the first panel I put up, and we're going to use this end here for the gable end, and this end will continue, the one with the lip, that'll continue down my roof. That gets covered. So our screws are going to go here, 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 and here, and I'm not going to pre-drill my top row because that gets held down with the ridge cap. So I only need to put in 3 rows here. The 4th row is the ridge cap. It's really important, since I'm pre-drilling all my panels, that I get my measurements right. I don't want to pre-drill all those panels and have a whole bunch of holes in the wrong spot. So I'm going to have an 1.5 inch overhang on my panel. So the bottom of my panel is going to be right here. I'll put my first screw in at 3 1/4 from the bottom of the panel, 3 1/4. Then to get to the center of my next purlin, which is right about there, I'm going to go 30 inches from that mark, and I'm pretty sure these purlins are all the same. Actually, I'm confident they're all the same. So then it'd be 30 inches from that mark up to the middle of the next purlin. 3 1/4 from the bottom. Then we're going to go 30 inches from there, which would be 33 1/4. Then another 30 inches from there, which would be 63 1/4. You definitely want to measure twice here and only drill once. Put my T-square on my panels. I'm just going to mark the ribs, and my hole ends up going down here. So I get 1, 2, 3, 4 holes I put in each panel for each purlin. Now I'm going to go ahead and check this last rib, make sure my square was still square when I was marking these. So I have the 0 down there, I got 33 1/4, and I got 63 1/4. Now we're going to put our screw in. I'm going to put it right in the middle of this little rib and the big rib. So right in here. Now I don't want these panels moving while I drill the rest of my holes. I'll be up there drilling, I won't be able to see the ends. I'm going to thread a couple screws in through the panels just to hold these stationary. And they're sticking out the bottom, so they only can move a fraction of an inch now if they're going to move at all. Okay, we're ready to put our first sheet on. I'm working right to left. I want my overlap away from the weather. So the weather comes from that direction there. So my overlaps are going to face this way. You want the part of the sheet with the lip on it to be the one that's overlapped. You don't want to overlap with this. You want this to be overlapped. So you're going to start with a regular rib. Now I'm not going to line it up here with the gable because that's going to screw up my eave edge. So I'm going to ignore the gable. I'm going to get the bottom where I want it, and then I'm going to use a 1.5 inch block here because I want an 1.5 inch overhang, and I'm going to put my first screw in right there. You could use closures under here to keep things out, but I got a lot of touch-and foam. I'm just gonna go ahead and spray a little touch-and foam under each rib here when I'm all done. Yeah, I'm gonna adjust my torque. Now you want to snugly seat your screw, but you don't want to squish your washer out. So don't use an impact driver. I'm using a regular drill, and I'm going to set my torque. Can you see that? The washer's squished a little bit, but it's not squished out. It's not beyond the metal ring. That's right where you want that, right there. Well, that was the hard one right there, getting that first one in. Now I'm going to check this to see exactly where I was. So it didn't slip at all. I'm right there at 1.5 inches. I'll come down here and lift this end up so it's at 1.5 inches. We'll double check that. Look at that. Right on. Now that was the tough one, getting that first sheet on. Now you can see where I did not try to line up on my gable end. Check how I'm just off a little bit, maybe 1/2 inch on my gable, squareness. But right there you can see I'm over maybe 1/4 inch on the edge of my sheet. And up here, she's probably over 1/2 inch. So she's off a little bit. That's why you don't line up with your gable end, because that's going to be covered by your gable trim. This is what you're going to see. So you want to make sure the eave is even. Okay. When you put your screws in, try to be square to the roof. And it's so much nicer when you pre-drill these holes. It's a lot easier doing one sheet at a time when you have a roof decking rather than just purlins. I can get up here and work. It's still a stretch across the 3-foot panel. Now we're not going to put any screws in up here because the top of the panel, the top of the metal, is going to be secured by the ridge cap. I'm happy with the way that first sheet went on. Now my next sheet, I don't have to worry about using the block on both sides. I got that as a reference point, the first sheet. I just need to use it over iron this corner. Okay, your next sheet, you want to make sure she's seated right in there, just like that. Can you see that? And we're going to put a screw there first. Now the trick is, again, to hold this while if you're working alone. So set your ladder up so you can rest your body against it. Make sure you have a coat on, each edges are sharp. You know, make sure it's right on. Make sure she's up here. Make sure she's on the other raised rib up here. And she did go down a little bit. I'm gonna back that screw off, raise it up because she slipped, and tighten it back down. And you can see she's right on. I put my block over here. One last piece of roofing to put on. And I already measured it, it's 8.5 inches. Now, I didn't know if you noticed when I cut this, I didn't go ahead and get a full sheet to finish each side. I bought one sheet for both sides, so that's why you have a raw edge here. If you're going to do this on your main house or something, I would go ahead and make sure you get the full sheet. But I didn't really think that was worth $28 more to get a full sheet to stay away from a raw edge like that. Here's an end profile of our gable trim. This part right here with this flat, that goes flat on your roof. This part right here usually goes over top of a rib from here to here. So you'd have a rib holding this up. Now on the gable end, of course, you should be starting with a rib. And you can see I started this gable end here with a rib right there. So it has support when you put this down like this. This goes flat against your roof. You have 3/4 of an inch. That's for this type of roofing anyways. The ribs are 3/4 inch tall. So you have 3/4 of an inch that you want something supporting it back in here. So the rib supports that. Okay. And you'll see that when I go ahead and install one of these. So the rib's going to support this end so that you have a nice constant flow with your gable trim. So it's not up and down. See, this could go, you could move this like this without something supporting this. Now, over here on this gable end, I don't have anything supporting it. You see, the last rib is back about 9 inches. These are 9-inch on center ribs. So if I was going to do this again, I made my roof exactly 18 feet, like 10 inches. And that's not enough for that last rib to sit here. So do a little better planning on that, or I got a little trick here, or you could take care of that with a furring strip. So here's a little better view of what I'm talking about here. If you had a rib right here, this would work perfectly. Or if I would have made because there's a rib I cut off, which is right here. I really should have made my roof line another inch, 1.25 inches maybe. Then I'd have a rib here right at the edge. But I didn't. But I do have some furring strips. Now these ribs are 3/4 inches high. This furring strip's a little shy of that. So all I'm doing is taking a roofing screw, taking the washer off. And I'm going to use that screw to hold this down. We're going to line it up. This also gives me a chance to line up and get a nice crisp edge on that gable trim right along my fascia here. Now, I'm going to leave that about 1/8 of an inch proud of my wood. Now, if I was using 3/4 inch lumber, and this is 5/8 furring strip, if I was using 3/4, I would just go ahead and screw that down tight and make sure that's flush. But I'm going to leave that a little bit proud. And wouldn't we know it, there's a big bow up here. Ah, great. Always right where you can't reach it. This is a butyl tape. It's sticky, gummy. This seals that gable trim against the roofing. Remember, this part right here goes against the roofing. So we're gonna run that butyl tape right down that seam right there. And you don't wanna stretch this stuff. It's sort of like dough, like snap back like pizza dough. So you don't wanna stretch it, you just wanna lay it in there. Press it into place. Our weather generally comes out of the northwest, which is coming towards this gable. So the weather's going to be coming this way. Well, if the weather's coming that way, I want to put this piece on first so that this one can overlap at the peak. And I'll cut my plumb cut on this one here. This one can just be put up with a 90-degree angle, put it right up there, and the other one can cover it. Oh, it has to start getting breezy out here, so everything's a big sail now. Now you notice it's going to cover those screws. It's going to be supported by this rib. I'm trying to hold this 10-foot gable trim up in the air in the wind, but it's going to be held up on the right side by the rib, left side by its own part of its own self. That butyl tape is doing pretty good right there. Let's go check out the peak. I only got it pushed down right here on the end. Hope it don't come down and slice my head off. Okay, can you see that up there? I want the top in the middle of that ridge board. Right now the bottom is. So I have to go about another 2 inches, maybe, yeah, probably 2 inches farther that way to get the peak, the tippy top of that trim in the middle of that ridge board. I think we got it. And if I went too far up here, I can always trim that off. And it's not like the end of the world. You want to go too far rather than too little, especially when you have 2 feet of overhang. Let me check underneath here, see how tight she looks. Oh, she looks nice underneath there. Now I'm going to look down through there and see if this is lined up good. Let me reach in here and peel a little bit of that foam off. I'm touching right there. There. I'm happy with that right there. Now the other one's going to come up here. It'll crisscross this one. I might have to come up here and trim a little bit, but it's going to have a plumb cut right here. I hope that'll hold for a minute. Go see if I have enough up there to cut my angle. Hey, back that off a little bit. There we go. There we go. Look at that. Flipped right around there perfectly. I'm I'm pretty happy with that. Now I'm just going to cut that off right here. Okay, here's how I dealt with the end of my gable trim. I just brought it down here flush to the end of my metal sheets, and I cut this one off at the same angle as my drip edge back here. Now you could extend this. You have 3/4 of an inch here. If you didn't cut this back here, you can actually like wrap this around, you know, wrap it down to like a 90-degree angle and close this off. But I decided to go this way with it. I didn't feel like, didn't matter to me if it's closed off or not. Nice little bat hole right there. Yeah, I'm gonna shoot a little bit of touch and foam up in here anyway, so that'll all be touch and foamed, so nothing can really get back up into here. And over here on the end, you can see my screws. I just spaced those out 13¼ inches, so they're all about evenly spaced all the way up through there. And I think that looks pretty good. Now I'm gonna go ahead and cut the other end off over here. I'll make that part of the video, cutting that trim off over in the other end. Okay, here I'm gonna cut off square, even with the ends of my panels. I'm just gonna eyeball that. That's gonna come down like that. Cut that off right there. So in here, I'm just gonna cut this parallel to this line right here. Nibble across there. I just grabbed a pair of straight snips here. There, that's how we dealt with the other side. I'm just gonna line up my big old square here right in the center of that ridge board. Right to the tippy top. Let me snip from here backwards on this other piece to get that out of the way. A little bit, yeah, a little bit more. There, she sits a lot flatter now. And I'm gonna go ahead and put a screw in right there. Hey, thanks for coming along on the video. That takes care of our roofing with the exception of the ridge cap. I'm not a big fan of climbing on metal roofs, so a friend of mine is going to come in and put the ridge cap on, and that'll be the last step we have doing our roof here. I really appreciate your time. Hit that notification bell. You don't want to miss the next one. Have a great day. Bye-bye.